Hi everybody, welcome to Level 0 Chess Beginners class. I'm Coach Gensai, and in today's lesson we're going to do our first introduction to chess, right? We're going to learn the names of the pieces, we're going to learn some of the basic rules, and we are going to go over notation. And we're also going to cover bishop, rook, and queen's movements. So that's going to be the lesson in this video. Okay, so everybody, let's start with the names of the pieces. And at any time, if you want to pause, feel free to do so. You see, everybody, on the chessboard, we have two colors. It's usually white and black. This is universal. And the only difference between white and black is who gets to go first. That's the only difference between white and black. They both have the same pieces. They're both equal, but since in chess we take turns to make our moves, white is the one who starts the game. White gets to go first, and then black goes second. So that is the only difference between white and black. Everybody. All right. So everybody, these pieces that I'm putting arrows at, these are what we call pawns. Let me also write it. Pawn. White has 8 pawns. Black also has 8 pawns. And everybody, these are like little soldiers that we have, and they go on these squares on the chessboard. This is how we set up a chessboard to play a game. And these pieces at this lines are what we call pawns. We always put the pawns on these lines. Okay. Now let's go over the next piece, everybody. The next piece we're going to go over is called the knight. And the knights are these like horse-looking pieces, right? In some languages, they also call this a horse, but in English, we call this a knight. And on the chessboard, white has 2 knights, black also has 2 knights. Everybody, the next piece I'm going to show you is what we call a rook. Both white and black, they have 2 rooks. And the rooks, they go to the edge of the board. So this piece is called rook. They do look like small fortresses, everybody, like a small castle, like a tower, right? And we put them at the edge of the boards like this, at the very, very corner. The next piece we have is called the bishop. Both white and black, they have 2 bishops each, everybody. And here's how we write bishop. Now, we have 2 special pieces, everybody. The first one is the queen. Queen is the strongest piece on the chessboard, and we're going to see today how a queen moves. The queen is the strongest piece, everybody. It is very, very strong. And both white and black, they have 1 queen each. Everybody, our last piece is the king. The king, everybody, is not very, very strong. King is usually pretty lazy. But everybody, you see the king is actually the most important piece on the chessboard. We're going to go over why it is the most important piece in the upcoming lessons, but it is the most important piece on the chessboard. So these are all the names of the pieces we have on the chessboard. We have the pawns on this line in front of our pieces, everybody. Black also has the same thing. And then from the corners, we put the rooks. You see, this is how we always set up the chessboard. We place the rooks at the corners of the board. And then we place the knights. And then the bishops. And then we place the queen and the king. Now, there is actually a way to place the king and the queen, and this is actually very important. Everybody, you see a white queen sits on a white square. We also call this a light square. And a black queen sits on a dark square or black square. And then you just place the king to the right next to the queen. All right. So these are, everybody, all the names of the pieces. Now let's talk about some of the chess rules. The first rule that we discussed is who gets to go first. We learned white always goes first, and then black makes their move. You see, everybody, chess is a board game. So in a board game, we take turns on who's going to make a move. For example, if white makes a move, then black can make a move. But white cannot go for a second time before black making a move. So let me show you what I mean by this. We didn't really discuss how a pawn goes, but let's say the pawn goes to here, everybody. Now it is black's turn, because everybody, we can only make one move per turn. White cannot play infinitely. White has to wait for black to make a move right now. This is why actually we learn all these strategies, we learn all these tactics, because you get only one chance per turn, right? So we try to find the best possible idea that we can try to do. Okay, so that is one of the important rules. Okay. Okay. Now, everybody, if you're playing as white, black is your opponent. You are competing against black to win the game. And if you're playing as black, let me flip the board, then white is your opponent. So you are trying to win against white. You see, everybody, on the chessboard, we can actually capture the opponent's pieces. Pieces are all these players that we talked about on the chessboard, right? And you cannot capture your own pieces. For example, the black knight cannot capture the black pawn. You cannot capture your own teammates because that is your own team. We don't want to capture our own pieces. And it is actually against the chess rules. That is something illegal to do in chess. Okay. Now we already mentioned about the light and the dark squares, but everybody, you see on the chessboard, there are dark and light squares. And we have 64 squares in total. One of the important things about these 64 squares is you can only put one chess piece on each square. There cannot be more than one piece in each square. Like you cannot put two pieces on each square, everybody. And each side has 16 pieces. So in total, there are 32 pieces on the chessboard. All right, so this is the basics, everybody, on the chessboard. Now, I'm going to talk about the chess language. And the chess language is what we call notation. Like if you want to go to tournaments, you will have to record the moves you do, and we use this notation format. And when we have our classes, if you have like an idea and you want to tell me your idea, we're going to use this chess notation to speak chess with each other. Okay, everybody? All right. So everybody, the chess notation comes from actually the coordination system. So it's not really related to chess, but it is very easy to understand. And we're going to get it in no time. So as we can see, there are some letters on the chessboard, everybody. You see, it starts from A and it goes up to H. And on the black side, it is the same. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. It is both the same for white and black. So everybody, you see all these squares on this vertical line are what we call A squares because it is between two A letters. So this makes this an A line. And for these vertical lines, we call them files. Let me also write it down. We call it a file. So this will be the A file, everybody. This next one would be the B file. Every square on this blue line is a B square. The next one would be a C file. And it just goes like that up to the H file, everybody. So these vertical lines are what we call files. Now we are going to talk about ranks. Okay. Everybody, besides these letters, we also have these numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It goes up to the 8th number. And it's the same on the other side too. So 1, 2, 3, and it goes up to 8. Everybody, you see these lines, these horizontal lines are what we call ranks. And this is number 1 line, right? But in chess, we just call this the first rank. So it's number 1. We call it the first rank. For the second number, everybody, we call it the second rank. So all these squares on this red line are number 2 squares. Okay, so the third one will be the third rank, everybody. The fourth one will be the fourth rank, and it just goes like that. Now, how do we actually combine this to talk about the notation? Everybody, you see, every square on the chessboard has a specific name. For example, let's look into this square. So everybody, every square is on a specific file and in a specific rank. So we look up and down to see which letter it is at, and then we look at to the left and right to see which number it is at. So this square will be at the C file. And then if we look at this left side, we see the number 4. And everybody, we call this square C4. We always say the letter first, and then we say the number. We don't call this 4C. We always call this C4. Okay? So everybody, all you gotta do is look at the chessboard, look at the letters and numbers to find the location of this square. So this is what we call the C4 square. Now let's do some exercises. I'm going to ask you a question, and then you can pause the video, try to find the answer, and then you can unpause it to see the actual answer. Everybody, let's look into the name of this square. What is the name of this square on the board? So feel free to pause this. I'm going to say the answer in 3 seconds. Okay, so everybody, the name of this square is, we first look at the letter, right? So you can look at also up, it's the same letter, and we see it's G. So first, we see that this is a G square, so you can write G, and then we can try to find the number. So if we see this is a number 6 on each side, so this will be, everybody, the G6 square on the chessboard. And there's only one G6 square on the chessboard. So when we talk about the location of the squares, it makes it very, very easy. For example, if the black queen goes to G6, you know where the black queen goes. To this exact square, everybody, on the chessboard. All right, let's do a few more examples as well. Okay, let's try to look at this square, the square that the black pawn is sitting at. So everybody feel free to pause this. I'm going to tell the answer in 3 seconds. All right, so everybody, you see this pawn is sitting at the B file. So this is a B square right now. And if we look at this number, we see 7. So if we combine both of them, we get B7. And the name of this square is going to be B7, everybody. So this is the name of this square. And you can name all of the squares on the chessboard like this method, and that the more positions, the more questions you do, it will be easier to name them, right? You won't have to look at the whole board like this. It's going to be a lot quicker. And after a while, you will know the square names more intuitively. Okay, so everybody, in this week's homework, there's going to be a lot of notation questions. So you are going to write the name of the piece and the location of the piece. For example, if I show a position like this, give me 1 second, then you're going to write the location of the piece. For example, this is a white rook. Which square is this white rook sitting at? And then you look at this letter, and then you find the number, and you see that the white rook is at H3. So this is the kind of questions that I'm going to ask in this week's homework. Okay. All right. So everybody, let's move on to the chess pieces. Now I'm going to put 2 kings on the chessboard because for us to be able to play a game, to make a position, there has to be a king on the board, right? So do not mind the kings. We're going to focus on the bishop. Everybody. So the bishop is this piece sitting at this square. Now, this bishop, everybody, goes in a very specific way. You see, the bishop moves what we call diagonally. So a bishop goes like an X shape, everybody. If the bishop is in the middle, it goes like an X. So here's what we mean by the X. The bishop, everybody, can go all the way up to the square to h7 right now, if it wants. But the bishop could also go all the way up to this square. So it's just like the top part of the X. Now the bishop, everybody, can also go down this way. Now, again, it cannot go to this square because that's where the king is. And everybody remember, you cannot have two of the pieces in one square, and you cannot capture your own king. You cannot capture any of your own pieces. And everybody, lastly, the bishop can go in this direction too, just like in the X. So the bishop goes diagonally. Diagonally, like an X, everybody. If the bishop is sitting in the middle of the X, this is the X. Okay, that's a crooked line, but this is what we mean by the X. The bishop goes like an X. All right. So everybody, let's see some positions, some details for the bishop. I'm going to add a little bit more pieces to the board, and then we're going to go over this. Okay. Now, everybody, I added more pieces to the board right now. You see, everybody, you can eat pieces on the chessboard. And we know that the bishop goes like an X. So the bishop captures pieces the way it goes. If an opponent's piece is in one of the squares that the bishop can go to, the bishop can actually capture it. So let me show you. You see, everybody, in the bishop's up left diagonal, there is a black pawn, this black pawn. So we can move the bishop to capture this pawn, right? At the same time, everybody, at the right down diagonal, the bishop can capture this rook like this. So this is how a bishop captures. Now, everybody, you cannot capture your own pieces, so the bishop cannot go to these squares. And you cannot move the bishop to jump over the pieces. So the bishop cannot go to this square because the knight is blocking the way. And if we want to capture a piece, we move the piece into that square, and then we remove the other square from that position. And then you can put that piece out of the chessboard. Because everybody remember, we cannot have two pieces in the same square. So this is how the bishop can capture, and it goes. It goes like an X. And it captures like an X too. If a piece is on the X, you can try to capture it. But remember, it has to be the opponent's piece. Okay. All right, so everybody, let's actually do some questions. Let me set up a position, and I'm going to ask you to tell me which pieces this bishop can capture. Okay, so everybody, in this position, it is white's turn. So it is important whose turn it is, because if it was black's turn, then black would be able to make a move, not white. Everybody, the white bishop is attacking some black pieces, right? Some black pieces are on that X. So is there any black pieces that this bishop, this white bishop, can capture right now? Okay, so everybody try to make that X in your head, right? The bishop goes diagonally. And we're going to go over the answers in a few seconds, so feel free to pause it if you want to come up with some ideas. Okay. All right. So everybody, in this position, let's make the X. The bishop can go like this, right? That's one of the hands of the X. And then the bishop can also go up like this. And would you look at that? That is a black bishop, everybody. So the white bishop could move to capture that black bishop right now. And let's make this bottom leg. So the bishop can go to any squares on this red line. And at the bottom of this red line, at the B1 square, there is a black knight. And we can capture this black knight, everybody. Now we also have a black rook at h3. So we could also capture this black rook at h3 right now. So these are all the squares that the bishop can go to. Now, everybody, you might be wondering whether the bishop can try to go off the chessboard like that. You actually cannot move a piece out of the chessboard, right? The board, everybody, is the limit. We can only move the pieces within this giant square. The only way a piece can get off the chessboard is if that piece gets captured. So this is how the bishop goes. The bishop goes like an X. All right. Now, everybody, let's go over the rook. I'm going to put two kings on the chessboard because we need a king to play the game. King has to be on the chessboard for us to be able to make some moves. Now, everybody, this is the rook. It is a small tower-looking piece, right? It looks like a small tower in a castle. Now, everybody, we said the bishop goes like an X. The rook goes like a plus sign. So, everybody, the rook can go up, down, to the left, to the right. It just goes like a plus sign. So let's make the lines for the rook. It can go up, it can go to the left, it can go to the right, and it can go down. So it is like a giant plus sign. All right. So everybody, again, you can never capture your own pieces and the rook cannot jump. So if there are any pieces on these squares, the rook can go there in one step. But again, you can only make one move per turn, so you have to decide which square you want to move the rook, right? This is, again, for every piece we have, you cannot move the pieces like to all of these squares, right? You have to make a decision on which one you want to move. If you move it down to here, now the rook can no longer go to this plus sign. Let's make a move for black, because remember, everybody, you cannot make moves back to back. Now in this position, the white rook goes a little bit in a different shape than before. It is still the plus sign, but everybody, you see, there is no more square at the bottom. We're at the edge of this board, so the rook cannot go down. But there are some squares towards the left. But we have a white king, everybody. The white king is blocking the way, so the rook cannot go this way. this is not possible. The rook cannot jump. So this is as far as this rook could go towards the white king. And everybody, the white rook could also go towards the right side. It could go to these three squares. And we also have this giant line. You see, the rook doesn't have any limitations. If it wants, it can go all the way down from here, all the way to this top square. And this is how the rook goes, everybody. The rook goes like a plus sign. It goes like a giant plus sign. It goes to the left, to the right, to up, to down. Okay, and lastly, everybody, we are going to look into the queen. Now, everybody, the queen is the strongest piece on the chess board. You see, the queen, everybody, could go like a bishop and a rook combined. So the bishop goes like an X, the rook goes like a plus, and the queen, everybody, goes like both. Whoops, like both. So all these colored squares are which the queen could go. So let's make those squares. So everybody, let's try to do the bishop moves, right? The bishop goes diagonally like an X. So let's make an X from the queen. There are no pieces in these squares, so the queen can go freely to any of these squares that this red line is touching at. And as we said, the queen could also go like a rook, everybody. So as we know, the rook goes like a plus sign. It can go up, down, to the left, and to the right. So these are how the queen can go. Again, queen, like bishop and rook, doesn't have any limitations. If it is not being blocked, it can go to any of these squares right now, everybody. All these colorful squares. And if a piece is sitting at one of these squares, the queen could capture it just like we did before. So let's see an example on how the queen could capture some pieces. Okay, so everybody, let's say we have this position and it is white's turn. We can try to capture some pieces with the white queen. So let's put back the squares that this queen could potentially go to, right? Now, everybody, you see the queen could capture the opponent's queen, the black queen, because it can go all the way up. And if we want to capture the queen, we could move the queen over to here, like this. Now, if we want, we could also capture the black queen, sorry, the black rook with our queen, everybody. But can this white queen capture the black knight, everybody? Remember, for this queen to be able to capture a piece in one step, it should be at one of the squares that it could go to. And as we know, the queen can go like a rook. It can go down like a rook. But everybody, you see, the knight is one square away from this queen's possible move. Therefore, the knight actually cannot be captured by the queen. So the queen cannot capture this knight. Now, everybody, there is this there is this blue arrow on the left side. Can the queen go to a5 square, can the queen jump on top of the bishop? What do we think? So everybody, the queen cannot jump over any pieces, so the white bishop is blocking the way, therefore the queen cannot go to a5. So if we wanted to make this more accurately, we would have to erase this line, and this is upmost square that the queen can go to. All right, so everybody, this is how the queen goes. We also learned how the bishop goes and how the rook goes, right? We're going to talk about the rules of the game more in depth as we learn more, as we approach playing. But this is how these three pieces move and capture. We're also going to spend more time on capturing later, so don't worry about that. Just practice how a piece can move like this. And again, in the homework, it's going to be a notation. And I'll see you in our next video. Okay, bye everybody.